Recording in 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Okay, thank you very much for joining me here, Johannes, on the podcast, the Interstice.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's not too long ago. We did our video at the mountain, which got tens and twenties of views. That was really cool. Yes.
Amazing. Finally gone viral.
Yes, gone viral at nearly 1,000 probably. But I wanted to have you on here because you have the unique story of not only being a good friend of the channel, but you have this cool background, which I think is really important for a lot of people who want to understand what is a way to either get into Japan like firsthand. What's the first step? They can just get into Japan and they don't have to do it through teaching, or it's a next step that they could move beyond that. So I think we've touched on it a little bit when we've chatted, but you haven't had the long format to kind of like tell your story in IT. So we got the time. So like, can you start from like when you were in, just your general trajectory as somebody in IT from the start. Let's go right back.
Okay, a little right back. Okay, let's start in high school. So, I played computer games and all that when I was younger. So I thought, yeah, why not computer things?
What games? What games you play?
I played like Age of Empires 2, and that was my favorite. It's still my all-time favorite. I still have it on this. It's a Mac, but it's still I made it work.
That's class. Yeah, you make where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, and then I don't know what else. There was some Star Wars games that I liked, like Jedi Knight.
TIE Fighter?
No, more like you have your laser sword and you run around and
Jedi Knight was one of the first.
Kill people.
Yeah. And it had the lightsaber, right? Like I remember that one.
Yeah.
And
it had also guns and so on, but it's like, who uses guns if you can have a lightsaber?
Yeah, a far more elegant weapon, as they would say.
Exactly, from a civilized age.
Yes. Any other? I mean, that's so near and dear to my heart. I'd like to stick on that a bit more. So Jedi Knight, that's like brings back a flood of childhood memories. But Age of Empires 2. What about? Did you ever play StarCraft? Were you into that?
No.
Oh right. Well, that just stops us dead in our tracks.
Yeah. Sorry. It's like also then. I went to a mostly business focused high school, but there was also something called business and information science.
So
which I was.
Allow me. Sorry to interrupt one more time, but like I'm curious then. How is the German high school experience different? I mean, I don't expect you to know because you didn't grow up in the West, but is it different? Because you just said it was like a business-focused high school, which is kind of rare from a Western perspective. We don't specialize so early on.
Yeah, it depends. So in Germany, there are essentially two ways in high school. One is a more generic thing, and then you choose one field where you want to focus on, and then you have like a bigger test in the end.
Okay.
Bigger final exam, like math or something. But then there's also something that doesn't take as long. That's 1 year faster, or back then it was. And then you have a specialization like economics or like social studies or technology and arts and so on. And for me, it was economics or business. Yeah, and there was a class which was economics and computer science or something like that, and it was so easy for me.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it was like, I understand, okay, let's do that, and then get like a good grade. So when it then after that came to deciding what to study, I actually want to do economics, but I also applied to the same, like economics and computer science or information science, or I don't know exactly what it's called in English. And also, what was it, mechanics and economics and mechanics or something. And I was not chosen for economics, but for the other two. And then I said, okay, let's go with the one that was already easy for me. That's how I got into that. So I didn't know how to program or anything before. I didn't have like I wasn't the childhood nerd that already programmed when he was 10 or so.
Okay.
So I started actually.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, sorry.
No, go on.
I started actually like laying my hands on code when I was 18 or so. So started 19 and started university.
So what year would that be? What year would that have been around that you were?
This was 2006.
2006. Okay. And what languages were you looking at?
Programming languages. You mean?
Yeah.
So since I was doing the hybrid, so not a full
Mhm.
like information science only thing, we were taught Java,
Okay. Okay.
which
That's
is
a
still
yeah.
around and important. Yeah, that's the one. That was my main one until a couple of years ago, I think. Yeah, and then I learned, thankfully,
Hmm.
during studying, that the economic part is not my thing.
The
Because it's
economic?
yeah. So
Okay.
because information science and economics, right? And economics was like no,
Right. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
because it was too much. At least when studying, it was too much. You just learn the stuff, remember it, then take like use it for the test, and then it's it.
And that
And
sucks. I hate that.
yes, exactly. And for information science, it was more like you think about logic, and once you understand the logic, then you can pass the test or have a good grade even. And
Right.
this is much more like what I like. Something like you get it, and then you have progress by that.
And you
And that,
apply it. You can
yeah,
apply it. It's
exactly.
not, you
Apply
don't
it.
just dump it as soon as you're done with it. That's something I was talking with a friend just yesterday, like the amount, and this kind of speaks to how I think like education needs to be overhauled. The amount of educating that is done currently, which is done for the pure purpose of rote memorization, which you regurgitate on a test and then forget. It's such a waste of the human brain to do that. Like there's no long-term use to that allows it all. I mean, it's flexing the brain's capabilities in a sense of like, look what I can do, almost like performing a trick. Like I can digest this information and then spit it back out, but in terms of what it functionally achieves for you in the long term, it just seems so stupid. But that means I like what you did, which is awesome. So you went down this other, I would call it like more cognitively applicable route, and then it led you
Yeah.
into, please continue.
Okay. So yeah, I started to get more into programming. Let's say the first year I didn't get it completely, but then something happened in the first half of the second year. Maybe, oh yeah, that's how. And then I became pretty good pretty fast in that time. And then I even became a kind of, I don't know what you call it in English, like an employee, like a tutor, but like paid by the university.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't know, and I don't know at that level what you would call it. It's not, it's like an intern at a university, except you're getting paid though, so you wouldn't call it an intern. I
Yeah,
don't
like
know, but
something
you're getting paid. You're getting
like
paid.
in addition to the professor, like help the people pass.
Oh, okay. Well, so that would
Something
be
like
like
that.
a TA, or at my university they call it a TA. It was like a teacher's assistant. So basically, you're like the guy who has, I don't know, like some know-how, maybe even has a degree at that level and is trying to get a master's, but you've been kind of
No,
assigned as an
I
understudy.
hadn't, but yeah, maybe
Okay.
something like that.
Anyways, yeah, there's
No
no
assistance really, but yeah. So that's there was some point where it clicked, and then it became easy.
there's no need for
And
it to be the same. But okay, it became easy. And you could you attribute that to anything, or are you just like, I guess I'm just better at this now?
what was that? No, I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, yeah, it can't. Well, sometimes by grace is the
I mean,
best. You
the teacher changed, the professors changed, and then it was like maybe he taught it differently or something, or he was more demanding or closer, but I don't remember. It's too long ago.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Anyway, but this was still like very basic, rudimentary knowledge that is not really usable in any professional context.
Okay.
However, however, I mean, it's like basics, and that's
Is it
important.
necessary though? Would you still say like this is, you got to walk before you run kind of thing, or like not applicable again?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's necessary, mostly necessary. So
Okay.
usually when you feel when you talk to people that don't have this foundational education, then you can tell, like in an interview situation, for example.
That's interesting.
Like,
Which
yeah, like this person seems to have experience, but foundations, would we have to teach that to him or her?
okay. Okay. So I suppose in that context it is helping you because if it's creating an impression in that interview, that's contributing to whether you're hired or not. So that's, that matters.
Maybe. I don't. I mean,
Throwing you a bone here. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it also depends on the interview process. So in Japan,
Yes.
they're not. So many big companies have like coding tests that are very focused in the first stages, focused on algorithms and data structures and like time complexity and things like that, which is pretty close to university.
Okay.
I would say. So many people learn that, and especially people that focus on computer science learn this kind of thing in university. And now if you're in the job like for 10 years or so like me, then it's not actually what you use in everyday work usually.
Okay.
So it has some value, of course, also for interviewing situations.
Mm-hmm.
But coming back to my journey,
Mm-hmm.
so that was there. Then one day at the end of the semester, some people came up to me and has said, hey, Microsoft is doing this boot camp. Okay. We should participate because we get certificates. And certificate means you get better job later.
Okay.
Like,
right.
Okay, whatever. It was like 1 week or so. And it was like a gaming thing, like a game engine or something. But we were not actually interested because one of us had bought a remote for Wii, right? The console, right?
Yeah.
Which is actually an infrared camera. So you have this bar in the front under the TV or on top of the TV, which has infrared lights.
Okay.
And because of these lights, you can like point with the remote.
Okay.
So he bought that, and then we programmed something to connect to it, and then use an infrared light on the screen to move the mouse. That makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense.
And then by that, the Microsoft guy said, maybe you should participate in the Microsoft Imagine Cup.
Okay, so this was a whole other competition that you got access
to? Exactly. So then we went there, and we actually won for Southern Germany.
Wow, I'm learning things. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And then this was back then Microsoft's environment, so that's not Java for this part. It's like C#.
Okay.
But it was like, I stopped using that pretty soon. And then we went on to the German stage and we got third, so couldn't continue after that. But it was an interesting experience. And what we did to come that far was something called dynamic ride sharing. So essentially you have your app and you say, okay, I want to go there. And another person also goes this way and can like pick you up or so.
How do you mean pick you up? You mean like an Uber driver or what?
Yeah, like an Uber, but more free. like ride sharing, not cab sharing.
Okay. Oh, okay. So it could be your car.
So like a virtual thumb.
Oh, okay.
You want to ride and then you get picked up.
And you designed something like that?
That was our contribution for the contest, which of course very, very elementary, like not great, and the UI UX, oh my god, but like user experience and stuff.
I mean, yeah, you say that though, but I mean, for the untrained, it sounds like magic to me. That's pretty cool. That's clever.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and I mean, especially given the year it was, right? I mean, whatever.
Yeah, true. I mean, I have a picture of me where I'm standing in front of the jury and present what we did, and have like a Microsoft smartphone in my hand, which looks like a brick. There's a screen that's like, I don't know.
Yay big.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
And I was so young. Anyway, so now continuing with the story. One guy who was also studying in Munich saw our contribution, and he actually wanted to do something similar, and had already a prototype, but for something that I didn't know yet. It was 2008. A new kind of platform for mobile phones called Android.
Oh, this newfangled thing. It won't catch on. It'll never catch on.
Yeah. Anyway, he was like super enthusiastic. Like, it's open source and you can do all these things, and it's much better than iOS. Maybe he didn't say that. He actually.
Okay.
But anyway, so that's why he gave me my first Android phone, which was also the first Android phone ever, HTC Dream.
That's man. Like, I was in telecommunications in Canada. So I was selling those. I was totally like, I remember being at some sort of, rep event where they want you to sell their phones, right? So, and HTC was definitely there. I do remember HTC kind of had this vibe about it that they had really ambitious stuff, and I have to say it's like the products they created, they were good. There was just some magic missing in them that I think couldn't capture mass appeal. I almost felt like they were too good. They were more like the enthusiast item, which gave you so much freedom, or like they were a little more complex than the average bear would want them to be. And so I think they intimidated people with some of their layout, which, I mean, case in
Yeah,
point, Apple, destroys that because it's like a chimp could
yeah,
pick this up and use it. But
exactly,
anyways,
exactly. Yeah, back then we used to say, as Android fanboys, we used to say, look, iOS or iPhone is like a villa, but it has everything inside. Like all the furniture's there, you can't move it or anything. But on
mhm.
Android, you have an empty house and you can renovate it or something, or change the colors and do whatever you want. That's what we used to say. But
An apt
yeah,
description, I think.
yeah,
Yeah, but
maybe
continue,
today is
continue.
a little bit closer, maybe.
Oh, definitely, definitely. They've
I mean,
learned their lessons. Yeah.
compared to back then, oh my God.
Oh yeah.
I mean, for me, yeah, actually, when I saw the first, when it came out, the HTC Dream
Hmm.
in Germany, I was expecting a similar hype like the iPhone, but nothing. Like I saw one poster or something. It's like,
Yeah.
well,
Well.
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I wanted an iPhone. I didn't have the money, but I wanted one.
Okay. Yeah.
It's like, can you believe it? You take it to your ear and it switches off the screen.
Yes. Brilliant.
Wow.
Brilliant. What great
Yes.
leaps forward. Yes.
Yes. Finally.
Yes.
Yeah. So that got me, like, this was my first touch point with Android.
Hmm.
And then actually later for university also, I made a paper which was called Making Money Mobile.
Oh well, that sounds far-seeing,
That's
depending on it.
that's very clickbait.
Yeah. 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 But
And I made this paper, and somebody contacted my professor and asked him if he had something in this direction, and he said yes, this one. And because of that, I was invited to talk at the first ever DroidCon in the world, which was in Berlin in 2009,
what?
about making money mobile, like conference, Android and only conference.
That's wild.
Not the first,
How old were you again when that happened?
was 22.
Okay. How did that? Was that like? Were you intimidated? Were you excited? What was the feeling to be? I mean, that sounds quite ambitious, quite significant.
Yeah, I was pretty insecure because
Mm.
I didn't know how to make money mobile.
that's
I was
that's
a
a good
student.
description. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was a student.
Okay.
So I was like, I did one, like I did a test, a try run, and then it was like, then the audience was like, yeah, but you didn't tell me how.
It's a
It's like
black
all nice
box.
and good, but
Yeah,
yeah.
don't look
So
inside.
I changed a little bit, and it was kind of okay, I think. But it was still in the beginning, so everybody kind of understood, I think, that it's
Hmm.
also not some, how many people were there, maybe 40 or 50, I don't remember.
Really, that I mean, God, when you think, I mean, what a
I mean,
conference would like that would be now. You say there were 40 or 50 people there?
in my room, like in total, maybe 200.
Oh, okay, okay. But for your presentation, it was about 40 or 50.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So, however, so this was the starting point, and then we continued to go to go to presentations. So me and a couple of other people, like the ones from the previous team I
Mhm.
mentioned from the ride sharing thing, and we gave talks, because if you give a talk, you don't have to pay for the ticket,
Hey, there you go.
and maybe you get food or even a hotel or something. So as a broke student, it's great,
Hmm.
broke student, and yeah, and then we said at some point, okay, maybe let's make a company, like 3 of us. This was 2011. Well, actually, we said it in 2010, but officially we did it in 2011. And then throughout the year, we even started to get like 1 or 2 or so, or maybe 3 smaller things done. Like we got some money, a couple of €1,000, which was great for a student again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then in 2012, so one of us was actually still working as an, how do you call it, student worker or something? Like you work up to 20 hours a week for
Yeah.
a bigger consultancy company.
Mm-hmm.
And they had an issue they wanted to apply it for a project at BMW, which required iOS and Android developers, but they only had iOS developers. So we went to I bought a suit. No, I didn't. I think I borrowed a suit from my dad.
All right.
We went to BMW, we made a presentation, and then we started at BMW in May of 2012 as freelancers. So
Developing.
this was like, and developing. Can I say that? I guess. So there was back then BMW attacked Tesla and the electrical market with the i vehicles. So BMW i3 and i8. And we made the apps for that. Essentially, you have a phone, and then you connect to it. You see a status, and you can open the car and honk or whatever. Things like that. See how far you can go and all that.
Okay.
And this was a long project, and you can imagine as a student still. And then all of a sudden, you get paid 70 euros an hour. That's maybe how much is in Canadian? Maybe 90.
Yeah, and I mean, at that time, it would probably be double that. Like I think at that time, yours would probably be like 180 Canadian. Like I don't know. That's an incredible amount of. And you say you were still a student at that time as well.
Yeah.
Wow,
yeah.
That's exciting.
Already in my masters. So, but by that, then I said, okay, let's focus on the business part now and push back the masters, and that's still the case now.
Right. Okay.
Anyway, so after BMW was like, okay, man, this was stressful. So I was the CEO of the company. So I was the project leader for the Android part. And as a 22-year-old, this was 2012, no, 20. When we started, I was 23, then 24. Was this correct? No, 24 then 25. But you can imagine, as a 24, 25-year-olds, you might think you are great and you have all the experience you need, but you don't.
Sure.
And you will learn that. You will learn it pretty quick, and it got super stressful in the end. But thankfully, you got through and approved and all that.
Approved for what? What was the project then?
By BMW without having to a lot of warranty, non-paid stuff.
I see.
But it was like, oh my god, there was a. So then I focused my energy on making a game for the next year or so. Didn't work, unfortunately, so that's where the money went.
Okay. So, well, that would be cool to talk about. What was the style of game that you thought of?
This was so a friend of us made a game engine. He was like, if you think like this is an amazing story, then his story is like, he, as his bachelor thesis, he created a game engine for Android.
Okay.
And this engine, including him, was bought by Zynga. Do you remember Zynga?
Name rings a bell, but I don't want to feign the amount that I know.
They made some Facebook games back in the early 2010s.
Okay. This is when I need a Google guy to be like Zynga and look all this up.
What was that?
Yeah.
I forgot the names. They have like one game where it's like, yeah, that's the...
It was like Farm something, or okay, let's see. Zynga, I'll look it up. But continue, please continue. So he develops Zynga.
So he developed this game engine, so I also used it.
Okay.
It was a 2D engine, which also had like...
They made Farmville? I was going to say Farmville.
Yeah, Farmville. Yeah, that's the one.
My old, the woman who broke my heart, she loved Farmville. Yeah. That was pure mobile crack back in the day. Okay. And he made a game based on that engine, or like their...
No. He made an engine for Android.
Yes.
And they wanted an engine for Android. So they bought his engine and him.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Gotcha.
So he is still in the US, but he's not at Zynga anymore.
Okay.
So I used his engine. It was like 2D engine, including physics and a physics extension, which was also the same physics engine, which was also used for Angry Birds and others.
Okay.
And I used that and made a game where you play a panda.
Go on.
And it's rolling. It's called Tumble Panda. So the panda is rolling and it has to jump and it can like explode and things like that. And all explode. The panda doesn't like fly around in pieces, but like bam.
I was gonna say, is it horribly violent? Like what kind of?
No, not at all. Maybe not violent enough.
Right, exactly. Was it a side scroller? How did the
Yes,
perspective
yes,
work?
side scroller, and then back and forth, maybe depending on what. And it was
Okay.
like, it took too long, I think, to finish. I mean, when you have like a YouTube video and it just takes too long, and then you put it out and you get just half the amount of views.
That seems to be the result regardless of what happens. So I just that to me is that's just standard issue. So it's all right either way. But sure, something. I mean, I'm very familiar with the idea of games being kind of like lost in development hell. Like, I mean, I guess
Yeah,
the
I mean, I
hmm,
I finished, but then it was already 2015,
mm-hmm.
and I was essentially too exhausted to do all the effort on the marketing side that was necessary or would have been necessary.
I see.
Um,
Interesting.
and that was that. So then, now focusing on IT. But side note, back then, just after that, my wife came with me to Germany, so she's Japanese. Side note.
Side note, yeah, sure.
And then she was there, and then like, oh shit, I need money again. So I started freelancing again. So went to another big company,
Okay.
had exactly one interview, and then they asked me to join them for 2 months, and then after that was over, 2 weeks later, they asked me to join another 6 months,
Okay.
and another three, and so on. And then we already had moved to Japan, and then sometime in 2017 it was over. So I started looking for positions in Japan, essentially,
I see.
because it's hard to maintain a customer basis in Germany if you have like 8 hours time difference.
True. How true that is. Okay.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
then
I mean, just to clarify for people listening, because that's an interesting trajectory, right? Like you were back in Germany with your wife, and you live
yes,
there with your wife. So did you meet her there?
uh, well, we got to know each other there, but we
Okay.
first met in Japan actually. So we both
Ah,
practice Aikido. That's a Japanese martial art,
right.
Budo.
From my old town,
And
Iwama, that was the birthplace for Aikido.
exactly.
Yes,
Yeah.
not that I ever
I've,
did it, but it was there.
I've never been there actually.
Yeah,
My
it's
wife has. My
you,
wife has.
you're not missing anything. Yeah,
I could go to the Aiki shrine.
yeah.
um, and visit like davetrippin
Yeah.
memorial places.
Memorial spots. Yeah. They're around there. You'll find a few. But so you hooked up with her in terms of your initial interest. You had a shared interest in Aikido. And was
Yeah,
it some sort of
so
like romantic? You guys had like a battle and then you recognized each other's strength and you were like, oh, this is hot. The like give and take, rolling around on the mats. How did that happen?
yeah, essentially like that. But let me explain.
All right.
So I started in 2004, and we went to a seminar with my Japanese teacher in Japan in 2009. And this seminar was in
Seminar 2009, did you say?
yes.
Wow.
Wait. It's coming. It's
All
coming.
right. Yeah.
So in 2009, I went to a seminar, which was not too far from where I live now, and it was also in Nagano Prefecture,
Mm-hmm.
in a place called Togari Onsen, Togari Nozawa Onsen. Nozawa Onsen might ring a bell. It's like a more or less famous ski area.
I've been
Parts
looking
of
at
the
hills because I'm going there soon, and that name has popped out. Definitely, I've seen Nozawa or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, so some of the 1998 Winter Olympics has been there.
Hmm.
So there is and these areas have like essentially two peak seasons. One is winter because of snow, and the other is summer when the high schools take off and go to their it's like summer seminars, and all the judo people and aikido and whatnot come there. And then usually all the hotels have a connected training hall, a dojo.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to one of these, and my wife, who was a student back then, and her friend, who also was a student, came. And I thought like, wow, that's some pretty crazy Japanese girls. So for example,
Yes.
they had the ponytail, usually you would have it here, right? But they had it here because
Top of
they
the head.
thought,
Okay.
top of the head, because they thought they need to show the foreigners some samurai spirit.
All right.
And obviously you do that.
This
Like,
is, and this was the original. This is historically
yeah,
accurate to have it.
you know, more or less, I guess.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
Anyway, so I just thought, okay, and I essentially didn't talk to her, and we didn't even train together. Like,
Okay.
we didn't pair up. So that was when we got to like when we first met.
You
So we met
became
in
aware
Japan.
of her. You became
Yes,
aware.
yes,
Nothing
yes.
came of it yet. It's just so
And
crazy to
then-
me. Like, just to cut in here for a moment, that was in 2009,
Yes.
which is so wild. Like, I don't know many relationships, marriages even, that last that long.
Yeah, no, that was not. I had a girlfriend back then, was
Oh,
pretty
okay.
fresh and was all good and so on.
Yeah.
And then 2013, when it wasn't that good anymore,
Mm-hmm.
still the same girlfriend. I went to a seminar with my still Japanese Aikido teacher in Germany,
Mm-hmm.
and then these two girls came from Japan.
Yeah. Okay.
And one girl had to get. This was 1 week.
Mhm.
One girl had to leave back to Japan in the middle of the week because
Mhm.
Japanese working style and so on.
Yes.
But the other girl, who is next door, she stayed. And then soon after the seminar, this was September, October, so the week between September and October.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we got to know each other. And then 2 weeks after the seminar, I didn't have a girlfriend anymore.
All right.
And soon she also didn't have a boyfriend anymore. And then I came to Japan in 2014 to see her, and then a couple times more. And then we said, okay, you come to Germany for a working holiday 1 year.
Ah.
And that's why she came back with me to Germany in 2015.
Does she speak German?
Yeah, very limited. She learned German for half a year or so in language school.
Oh, okay.
But then, of course, if you don't use it after that, you lose it.
Right. You use it or lose it. I think that'd be cool. Listening to a Japanese person speaking German would be trippy. Like, that's, any sort of weird, like, cross, like, culture thing like that is always very, very interesting. Okay, so that wasn't, it's just nice to get that. Of course, that's quite a significant slice of your life, your relationship there. But, so, yeah, you were, like, out of the BMW thing, you finish off Explosion Panda, or what did we call it? What was the name of it?
Tumble Panda.
Tumble Panda, pardon me. And then you're realizing, okay, what's the next move? And you'd thought that there would be some fertile ground in Japan for an IT position.
No.
No.
So when we moved here, I was still working for another company in Germany, like a TV. Yeah, I think maybe the biggest TV network in Germany even.
Oh, okay.
So I worked for them for 7-8 months as a freelancer, and then we moved and they continued the contract for another 6-7 months or so.
So this is really interesting to me. So how many variations of work have you had by that time? Like, you've worked for this TV company, you worked for BMW, you made your own game. Was it the 3, or like are there any more that I'm missing in there?
That were the bigger ones. Then we had also smaller clients in between.
Okay.
Also, like when I was a student, I worked in some IT company, but I would count that. So yeah, maybe a handful or so. But the big ones that really counted and had impact on me were the 3, I think.
Were the 3. Okay. It's just like, this is another fascinating, I think it's a sort of interconnected subject to share with people right now, is how much more frequently even people with like established skill sets that would allow you to stay in one place, how much more frequently in our generation, I would say, and probably like it'll only accelerate in the generations behind us, how much more commonplace it is to move and jump around and like find, different positions.
Yes, but I must add that that's the nature of freelancers, much more than full-time employees or regular employees.
Well, okay, fair. That's a great counterpoint to make. But I think as well that there's probably a lot more people, it's like your position, your type of work, that sort of freelance didn't even exist before. Like that's something that has grown out of, the sort of technological developments that have happened. And I'd imagine as well, with everything else digital, there's all these other freelance positions that it more suits the people who do all these new roles not to belong, because if they don't, then they're given like the, you know, who as a successful freelancer wouldn't prefer to do that? Because you define your own schedule, you choose the different projects you work on, you know, like I can see why it would be
definitely.
appealing.
Back then, when I left Germany, the market was amazing for freelancers, like way too much demand, nobody there to fill it. And now
cool.
it's just improved, from my perspective.
Right, interesting.
Like, the rates are like
pretty good. Pretty good. In Canadian dollars, you'd be making millions an hour at this point. Yes. No. Okay, so this is cool. So we get you. What was the? You said, what was the connection to Japan? Because you said that it wasn't necessarily like, oh, you had a good idea to come over here for that.
No, the connection was my wife. So the year was up. She was pregnant, and she said, like, I want back. I want to go back. I don't want to go to the hospital here, and then there are complications. I don't know what's going on.
Oh,
so she wanted the security of like an environment where she's like a native.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that. I can understand that. And what you go ahead. Go ahead.
And so we said, like, okay, let's do that for 1 year as well, and then we see.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we did. And I don't know why we didn't decide to go back or somewhere else, but for some reason we're still here.
The females, never underestimate their wiles. But I mean, there's worse places to end up. There's definitely worse places to end up. Although, I mean, that's a whole nother tangent I would go on with you, because I mean, we haven't even really got into it before, but like I had this other feeling, like if I hadn't ended up in Japan, just like my spirit towards, I want to see what's outside the front door, you know, I want to go over the next horizon. For some reason, I felt some fascination with the German culture. I don't know how I would have got over there to work, but I mean, it was always in the back of my mind. And whenever I've been at like hostels in Japan, for some reason I always run into Germans, and I'm always like, you know, where should I go and what would be cool there, because it was this like past fantasy that I had. But I had this, I was like, when I speak to Johannes and I want to talk to him about Germany, I was like, I had this question saved up. I was like, can you identify like a uniquely cultural detail of the German people that is not something that would immediately come to someone's mind unless they visited there, and they'd be like, oh, I didn't know they did that in Germany. Like, you know, could you name anything like that? Because when it comes to mind, I mean, there's the obvious ones. You think of German engineering, you think of Mercedes, you would think of lots of sausages, you would think of beer naturally, perhaps raves and dance music, Berlin, you know, very cool city, but like I don't know, anything else like the German pastime that the world is unaware of, you know. Just I'm not really sure. People. No, that's fine.
Anything outside of the
those things? That's we've mined it all.
I mean, Oktoberfest, and they like soccer and.
Okay.
And
well, what about in terms of, okay, here's something, because this is talked less about. Those are like surface level things. What about German like behavior? So if we talked about you know, you have the stereotypical understanding of like people in the West, and that would be like hyper individualist. That's like what we're recognized for in North America. Canada less so. Canada, we're a little more European, you might say, you know, because we were the loyalists and all that. But then you have the counterbalance to that in Japan. You have the hyper collectivism. Where would you say that the German people exist in that spectrum of individualism versus like egalitarian or collectivist?
I think much more. I mean, definitely not as individual, maybe as the US, but definitely much more than Japan. I mean, it's no comparison, essentially. Also, all right. Like, yeah. How annoying Germans can be.
Okay, there we go. We finally hit it. In what sense? How do you mean?
I mean, the thing is, for example, in winter, so German winter, so other than Japan, in Japan, usually the times where you have daylight don't vary so much over the seasons, right? In summer, now
It's
it's
true.
maybe the sun goes down at like 5, and in summer maybe it's 7. But in
And
Germany, it's like,
and it hits a like static state, right? Like it seems to change a little bit in the seasons, but then it equalizes in Japan where it just hits this like now for the next 2 months, it will always hit at this time that the sun sets. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yes. And in Germany, it's like in summer, sun goes down at 10.
Yeah.
So you have way more like daylight.
Yeah.
And then in winter, I wouldn't say it goes down, but and I'm telling you in a second why. So in winter, maybe I don't know 4 or something, and you don't see it until it's 9, and then even then, the sky is gray. So it's like, yeah, it's always dark. And if you go to work, obviously, I don't know. Let's say you start at 8, then you leave the house at 7. It's dark. You go back at 6 or something, and it's dark. And so Germans are not, let's say, most cheerful people.
They have SAD. They have seasonal affective
they're
disorder.
They're not sad, but they're grumpy. Then it's like, it's cold outside. You get into a train, it's packed, and it's way too hot. You're in your coat, and the people don't go out of the way when they don't open the door and so on. And then it's just like, get in.
Okay, they're grumpy. But like, yeah, I want to clarify. When I said SAD, I meant in relation to seasonal affective disorder, SAD. It's a similar thing that what you just described. It's like, this is totally familiar to me, and that my dad would say that. He's like, Dave, I get up in the dark and I come home in the dark. That's all I know, because Vancouver is so similar to that. And also in the same way, our summers are like, the days are very long, which is a blessing, but in the winter it's like permadark, so okay, that's interesting. I hadn't thought. So maybe Canadians are more akin to Germans, given this this kind of, because we can be very grumpy.
That's why you want to go to Germany.
Yeah, I was like,
deep inside, it's like
yeah, it's similar. It's like, I want to be miserable there as well as here. I can be, I can always be grumpy. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that we've gotten to the depths of that now a little bit. How are German summers though? Are they a dream because the days are so long?
They can be, if it's not raining.
If it's I have to get away from the mic. Yeah, even during summer, it's raining a bunch. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, in Japan, usually if you think of summer, then it's like you have a month of really hot, then you have a month of rain, and then you have another month of really hot and humid. I mean, and in German, you have not humid, you have hot, but maybe for a week, and then you have rain, and then you have maybe another week, and then rain. And so it's not super consistent as in Japan. It's always like,
Germany sucks. I've changed my mind. Just kidding.
But if you have, then it's super nice because it's not humid. So for summer, I would say maybe a good German summer is like a spring in Japan.
Interesting. Okay.
So it's warm, it's nice. You can go outside. You get sunburned, of course, but it's not humid.
Okay.
So it's so nice. And of course, then you can stay outside. Like work finishes at 5, and then yes, I still have 5 hours. Let's go to the beer garden.
All right. Okay. And suddenly redeemed all over again.
Yeah.
So you escaped this German bleakness, and you come and you have your child here, and then you started in, was it freelance that you did when you first got here again?
Yeah. So I continued working for the German client that I essentially brought over with me for half a year or so. And once that finished, I had to look for something in Japan, essentially, which then eventually brought me to Tokyo in the end of 2017, or Yokohama.
I feel like it must be said, maybe people are already getting into this, they already know this, but like, it just shows the flexibility of having that background, that you could, come over. I mean, did you find it difficult to move to get that like next job when you went on to do whatever else, or was it,
Oh, I don't know. I think not living in Tokyo was gave me a little bit more of a what do you say? It was a little bit harder because now when I'm in Tokyo and I have like, I don't know, engineering manager, I'm in software architecture. So on LinkedIn, like every week, some recruiter says, "Hey, let's be friends."
That's pretty
I mean,
incredible.
not necessarily. They don't necessarily have what you want, or you are not necessarily what they want. But you get the context and so on, like automatically.
That is incredible. The other thing I wanted to talk about, because we touched on this a bit, and this can be directive for people who are curious about it again, because you said that you told me this story, I thought it was awesome, where you knew a recruiter who then saw where the people she was recruiting were going and decided, hey, I can do that, did courses, and then got into the same field. Do you remember speaking to me about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to put a little more
But
meat on
she's
that?
more of an exception. She's more of an exception. But yeah, so actually, so I was recruited by a certain agency, and then essentially once we had moved from Nagano to Yokohama, I met with them, like just they want to keep the contact because I'm a future opportunity for them.
Yes.
So I met them, and the guy said, my recruiter said, "Hey, I'm leaving. I'm changing department, and my successor is this woman." And then 1 year later, I met with this woman, and she said, "Hey, this is my successor because I'm becoming an Android engineer."
That's so funny. And do you recall, was it on Udacity or Udemy or
Exactly.
Udemy?
Yeah, something like that. I think Udacity. She did like 2 courses or so,
Okay.
and then she had a couple of offers, and I think she even chose the one with the worst pay, but with the most interesting project.
Cool. Mad respect for that, like always, if somebody does that.
I mean, she also said she definitely like it was a step down when it comes to salary, but it was like something she wanted to do.
Oh yeah, and I mean, what is that? These are jobs that don't have obvious glass ceilings, or if it does in the immediate position you have, you can use it to leapfrog into something that won't. IT does not have a glass ceiling. It doesn't. And I mean, as soon as you're in the door, I mean, this is talking from a guy who's never even worked in it. I've just observed anybody who has. And it seems to always lead to like one more certification then leads to this. And I mean, there's a million routes, right? Like you could do like the security side, you could do the networking side of it, you can do the software development. I mean, it's just such a, I know it's not for everyone either, so I don't want to like overhype the industry, but it's just something that I feel like more people should know about, and should know that the barrier to entry is often usually just whether you're lazy, because now that there's these courses that you can do, you could, and they're not expensive. Like, I mean, maybe they're going to cost you a few dollars, but like what's a couple $100 compared to like what you pay for a BA in a in an arts major that gets you nothing. Gets you nothing. Like
Speaking from experience.
Yeah, I mean, I say that, of course.
I mean, of course, you have to consider, if you specifically want to be in Japan, most likely you need some kind of bachelor degree or something to get the visa.
Yes.
Or a wife, that's the other option.
Oh, there's the other one. That's, people say that so often. I'm like, ooh, bad option. That way lies madness.
And don't do it for that reason.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so you come over. One thing, now we could just go on a bit of a tangent, because it's like, I don't know, I love the like march of technology, like how, because Android is releasing, like, you have all the different variations over the years, right? You've got like ice cream cone and candy cane and Oreo sandwich, and like you obviously, who is designing that? Who is designing the next iOS version? Is it Google?
I mean, iOS is of course Apple, but Android is
the OS. The OS. Sorry, yeah.
So essentially it's Google.
Yeah.
Originally, Android was made by a formation of companies called the Open Handset Alliance. So this was like a couple of companies. Google was like the leader, but a couple of companies like HTC and so on.
Okay.
So eBay, I think, who were like in this group and like collaborated to make this work.
Okay.
But Google had bought Android maybe it was 2005 or so,
Okay.
from a startup, and for like $30 million, which is like nothing in comparison to what they got, right?
When you consider, yes. Yeah, they made a
Yeah,
good move there.
yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, but Google, it like Google bought it. It's essentially Google driven.
Mm-hmm. And and this is the thing I noticed, of course, like when I was getting into the Udacity stuff, it's like actually the things like say you're going to design apps, it's like the whole system, I can't remember if it was called like the API or whatever, like whatever system you design things in, you need to know actually like nothing to do with like how that program was built. You just know the language that then manipulates that program. I was kind of like, it was interesting to me because I could actually see in the comparison the kind of like when I use editing software, how I know nothing of the wizardry that creates how they create the editing software, but then you exist on like this other level of it. So what sort of application are you designing applications right now? Like, I mean, I don't know how much you can disclose with your company. We must be careful, but like,
So I started designing architecture, software architecture essentially. So
mhm.
I don't draw UIs or something like that, if that's the question.
The question is,
Um,
what is architecture then? What does that do?
okay, so essentially, when you want to make a software application, you can do it in certain ways. Usually how you start, maybe when you did the Udacity course, you put it just in like wherever fits.
Mm-hmm.
But that's absolutely not scalable or maintainable.
Okay.
So then there comes something where you have to have like layers of abstraction maybe, or like separation, and that everything has like a very specific role. And
Okay.
this is what we call an architecture. So we have like this thing only takes care of business logic. So where data is coming from and how it's going to be combined and how it's going to be then given to the user interface, for example.
Right. That was actually something else. I mean, I found really really fascinating with it is that there's actually where I'm afraid of the nuts and bolts of things usually, like the where numbers start to appear and you have to use like equation symbols to solve problems. But when I discovered like a large part of app design is actually very visual. There was the you had to design, I can't remember which it was, but like one of the languages basically designed the logic of the buttons, like if you click this button this is going to happen, but then the other language, maybe it was JavaScript was describing what's displayed visually. And I found like, oh, it's almost like using code to create Photoshop. That's what I found, because you're like coding an image essentially. But then
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I enjoyed that because I was like, oh, so it's like for those who are more visually inclined, actually this can allow for those people to participate as well. It doesn't just have to be people who are informationally or like logically grounded. But I mean, I don't want to get into too many abstractions here because I'm sure for the average person to hear about like software architecture is probably a little bit, I mean, who knows, maybe some people are like, Dave, don't be a fool, that's the most fun topic in the world. um,
Definitely.
but no, it's still like the topic of technology is fun. um, how do you see, does your medium evolve much with the software that's or hardware that's backing it up? Like, say for example, AMD releases their new 6000 series. Is anything that's happening in hardware something that you need to be aware of while you're doing your work?
No, not when it comes to something like a new processor or something,
Mm-hmm.
because as you mentioned, it's essentially abstracted away from what I'm doing.
Okay.
Um, but if there's, for example, a new type of device, like a foldable or something,
Okay.
right? Then that's something that's interesting for us. Of course, we don't necessarily need to jump on that immediately, especially if we see it's not very mature yet.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, yeah, like a foldable, but it's breaking or something. It's like, and we can, but still, it's interesting for us. And eventually, when it catches on, then we need to do something because we need to give the best experience to our customers.
Okay, so then here's my next question then is, what is evolving in what you do that you have to like stay up on it, that if you weren't still educating yourself, you could become dated?
I mean, so first of all, I'm not in software architect anymore. So I'm now an engineering manager, which means I have essentially handed over the responsibility for the architecture.
Okay.
However, if I would still do that, then I would need to stay up to date at least with the new changes that Google introduces.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, there's an Android developer blog by Google,
Mm-hmm.
and essentially checking that and making sure I understand what's going on and be up to date. And then it's also a certain tool set that would be considered the standard right now.
Okay.
Which is like not usually, for example, if you interview somewhere, then there will be, you cannot know everything. Like if
requires specialization, I guess.
Yeah. So for example, let's say we have 15 different libraries or something. So essentially, library is a set of tools that then can be included in the application.
Okay.
And let's say we have 15, and we don't expect anybody to know all that, but we expect a certain match so that our investment into that person doesn't need to be so high when he or she starts.
How do you mean that this person knows how to deal with some particular element of the work they're doing?
We expect some overlap of
Okay.
of the technologies we use and the technologies this person is familiar with.
Oh, okay, sure.
But not 100%. Like this is almost too good to be true.
Okay.
Almost not possible.
Okay.
And then again, the way we use it might be a little bit more advanced than most others do.
Okay, I see. What would you say is the most exciting part of your industry that exists now? Like you're like, wow, this is an interesting thing to be involved with. Like, what do you see it becoming? Or I can't even frame it, right? Because I don't know, I don't have your perspective on this, like that you can see where Android or the stuff that you're dealing with is going. Like, do you think that it exists within the sort of devices that we'll use, like augmented reality stuff, or like, yeah, where do you think it's most interestingly applied in, you know, let's say the next decade, going from 2020 to 2030?
It's hard to say. So I mean, the trend for devices, especially mobile devices, has been on like marginal improvements, right? In the last, I mean, the iPhone was like unbelievable leap, but then since then it's been like, of course, if you compare like the iPhone 12 to the iPhone 1, that's also unbelievable, but there's like incremental improvements. So it's really hard for me to say. I mean, Android is very everywhere, not everywhere, but for example, it's in your camera. Did you know?
Which one?
The 6500 runs Android.
I didn't know that. I should have assumed that with the complexity of the menu system that was going to be an Android. Yeah, no, I should have.
I think you can install some third-party apps or something, and that's because it's Android-based or so.
It can. I don't know how. I don't
know how much of a real Android or how
right.
It's shrinked up. Yeah, but it's really hard to say for me to foresee like what's going to happen in 10 years or so.
It does kind of raise the point. I mean, maybe you've even said it there. It's hinting at it. Is this kind of universally applied, like in ways that you don't even realize that it's getting into absolutely everything? I had a question that popped to mind. I wondered, right? So you have Tesla right now. I believe in 2021, given the like big data stream that they have coming in from their fleet of vehicles, they're going to be able to offer on a subscription basis. You don't even have to buy the software upgrade outright. You can just subscribe to it, which is another brilliant, you know, this is what people are doing. They're doing subscription models, which if you want to get subscribed to something that's really awesome, I would say that's my Patreon. So if you haven't already, please do consider doing so. I really appreciate you guys. And it's how this podcast exists and continues to grow. So thank you for doing so. But with that said, the way that they'll do that, I'm wondering, how could Google not compete with that? You know, I've kind of wondered, like, how is Google not in more cars? Or maybe they are. Like, are the systems that are running in, like, Mercedes, because they must have, like, smart screens and stuff in those cars. When is it, you know, when is, like, Android or why hasn't Android started to develop their own self-driving software? Like, what do you say to that?
So there's Android Auto exists. I don't remember which brand actually uses, maybe Fiat or something. Okay. So it's not like the most sophisticated experience, maybe.
Okay.
Like, of course, navigation on Google Maps is like out of anybody's class. I think it's probably the best navigation system. That's maybe Apple comes kind of close, but it's still not. But apart from that, like BMW and so on, they want a really integrated experience with all the systems and so on. So, and I mean, Google worked on self-driving cars for a pretty long time, but I think they scaled it down recently. So maybe they just gave up. I don't know, but it happens a lot. Like maybe do you remember Google Glass?
Oh, I was just having a conversation about it the other day. Absolutely, yeah.
So for those who don't, so essentially in 2012, there was every year there's a conference by Google called the Google I/O, and at Google I/O 2012, Sergey Brin, I think was it, jumped out of a plane with his Google Glass on and filmed the whole thing, and then landed essentially to the keynote of the conference. And they announced, okay, now Google Glass, this is the developer prototype. You can all get it for $1,500. Only the people at the conference. And after that, it was never sold anywhere.
No one
so
saw
they're
it
just
again.
like, I mean, thinking back, of course, when you have imagine this, right? You essentially have your phone here, and you have a camera, might be always on. Yeah. So of course, people feel like uncomfortable in front of you.
Yes.
If you have this thing here.
Okay.
And I mean, so actually, Google is actually killing a lot of products. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
Including maybe self-driving cars, but I'm not sure if they did that already.
One thing, I mean, I think it ties into, and this relates to how it had come up with the friend that I was talking to it about, like, so much of whether it's success or technology, and the two shall meet occasionally at a crossroads here. A lot of these things are always like right place, right time. And I think maybe, I mean, the idea of augmented reality, which is essentially like that's what the Google Glass is, right? Because you got VR and then you got augmented, which integrates with what you see around you. I think it just hadn't quite found its niche, or hadn't quite found in a way that it didn't look fucking ridiculous on your face with this thing. But I had this idea, and it's crazy, like, you know, I mean, my entrepreneurial spirit, I think it's in there somewhere. Like, as a result, like, my brother's like this as well. But I was thinking, you know what they could have done where it wouldn't have mattered and would have actually looked really cool for the people who would use it if you had applied an augmented reality Google Glass-like feature system for somebody who is a runner or a cyclist, probably most specifically a cyclist, that you would be able to wear these glasses and they would give you all sorts of crazy heads up information in terms of like wind drag, the speed that you're going, like all these different things, and in an unobtrusive way. And it was funny because when I brought it up to my friend, I was like, I think this is awesome. And he's like, believe it or not, Dave, I looked it up. There's 3 companies that are already currently working on this. I was like, damn it. Okay. So I wasn't I didn't get there, but I think the augmented reality it's still coming. They just got to hit a sweet spot with like what's possible, because I reminded my friend as well in the conversation that you remember there was VR back in the 90s, right? Like they had whole arcades dedicated to it, but it wasn't the right time. The technology wasn't there. And so people were like, oh, it'll fail. It's not a reality. This will never come to fruition. I mean, look at it now. Like VR is absolutely exploding.
I remember a friend of mine bought the first Oculus, which might have also been only a developer version. And I tried it, like, it's terrible. It's like I can count the pixels. What's the resolution of this?
Yes.
This potential.
Yeah, as a representation of potential, amazing. But
yeah, and I mean that. I guess that's why Facebook bought it. But
and then just recently the Oculus 2, and really, some incredible things happening in that way. But I mean, it must be interesting because I feel like your finger on the button that you be involved in that space. I mean, I'm sure you'll see things coming that a lot of people won't, because you'll see them in the
Maybe,
preliminary stages. Um,
maybe. I
but
mean, this one friend that the guy that contacted us after this competition from Microsoft,
hmm
the one who told us about this Android thing,
hmm
he is this kind of guy. He's super close, and I feel he's always right. Like he told me in
okay.
2011, hey, if we have some money, we should buy Bitcoin.
In 2011, oh, dude, yeah.
Yeah,
What
like imagine $1,000 back then.
in Bitcoin back then? I mean, I think
I
in
mean, then still
2011,
you have, yeah, then still you would have to keep it until now. But then it
who
would be like, I
cares?
think 200 million or something.
Yeah. $1,000 in 2011. Yep, yep. He's smart guy, smart guy.
Because he was back then, Bitcoin. I read the white paper and so on, and they just had the rush when it went up and so on. And I was like, yeah, first I didn't have money, so it was still
Right.
before BMW,
That's a
and then it
problem.
was like, yeah, it just went up, so probably I think the hype is over.
Right.
Okay, and so over the years I learned that he's right and I'm wrong. Generally, I should trust him.
Yeah, but that's why we build these relationships. We got to trust these people. I mean, maybe we learn that too late, but it's
Yeah.
important that we do. Do you have anybody else like that you've come across where you're like, this he's got his finger on the button?
I think no, because everybody, like, for example, me, I specialize and then I'm on Android, right?
Yep.
So I kind of focus a lot of energy on Android,
hmm
and many people are like that. But he is like, he does what he likes, and oh yeah, that's a new paradigm. I like that, and da 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 da. So
Okay.
he's more like a very early adopter, maybe of a lot of things.
I see. So I have this question for you because it's really interesting to me because we've come into this conversation. It's great getting a history. It gives people context for like the whole, IT potential that you have over here in Japan. But obviously, I mean, you and I first have known each other as a result of the creative side of things. And I was wondering, so what was that for you? Like what first? Because I mean, those two don't seem very obviously connected. Uh,
Well, I mean, software engineers need to be creative.
hmm,
They are creative people. I mean, some people, especially apps, I think, some people are very intrinsically satisfied with just super optimizing code or something, or nerding down on software. But
mm-hmm.
usually people that make very UI heavy things that are very close to the actual user are more kind of creator, people that build things, right?
Mm.
So it is creating
Well, actually, yeah, because I feel
creationist
yes,
process,
I
right? So, um, but it's still not making videos.
right,
Of
but I
course.
mean, I'm missing something there. When I think I was like, well, this guy made a game. He made Tumble Panda. This is the creator of Tumble Panda. So obviously there was a root there. So what is it? I'm curious, and it doesn't have to be one thing, but like, what is it that you most get out of when you're creating things? Because people are deriving satisfaction from different elements of it, right? Maybe it's the visual, maybe it's the actual physical, and maybe it's more holistic. But like, what is your feeling on that when you're
And
creating
then for
these
me,
videos?
when I make a video and it gets good at some point. So, for example, now recently, the last 1.5 weeks ago, I went on a mountain and do you know what a kofun is?
Hmm?
It's like these keyhole shaped graves,
No, I don't know those.
tombs.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
have them, especially in Osaka. There are actually 160,000 of them in Japan.
Okay.
But there's one not so far from here, like 20 kilometers. So I went
Mm-hmm.
there up on a mountain. It's like 100-meter large tomb.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's big. And I went there and made a video and so on. And right now it's very rough cut. So
Yes.
it's kind of okay. It could become a good one, but currently it's not there. And then when this turns around, when you get the music and the rhythm and
Yeah.
then the color and it looks good and it feels good and it's fun to watch, and you
Yes.
have maybe probably not the whole video, but a couple of moments like that where you say, yeah, that's good. And
Yes.
you say that about your own stuff, because usually probably you're the same. You're pretty critical about what you do, right?
Indeed.
And you have that, and then it's good. Then that's satisfying, and then you put it out, and then people say, yeah, that's crap, or they
Yeah,
don't watch it,
that's the
or they don't
best
watch
feeling.
it. Yeah, that's I would argue that's still better than people not watching at all.
Oh yeah, I mean, of course it is. Of
That
course
you
it
get
is.
like usually you get like 2,000 views, and then it's like 500, and it's like fuck.
Fuck. Yeah, I
Like you missed up the thumbnail, and essentially this peak you get at the start, you have to get it right. If you change it after that, probably it won't pick up the
yes.
same as it would have.
I do think that it's the greatest constant not test but practice of humility, like to create things that you derive the most satisfaction from, that you created something and reached that moment that you were talking about where you're like, I know that this is getting sweet, this is cool, I like what I've created. And come what may, if you get that juicy performance, then I mean that's just in a whole nother world of like satisfaction and dopamine spike. But that you should never ever ever, much as it is tempting, feel this woe is me attitude towards it, because I mean it's just the ultimate failure of perspective to be angry about the performance of something. Even even to go as far as if you were like truly cheated, it's just like to be able to participate in the medium at all, I think is a really incredible thing.
Yes. And I mean that for apps it's similar, right? You probably work a lot longer on something, but then eventually you make it really good, hopefully, and you put it out, and then people see it, hopefully. And
Yes.
maybe if you're lucky, then you get really successful, or not. Most likely not.
Most likely not. Yes.
Just like YouTube. And then you do it again, and maybe one day you have something nice, and you learn from your mistakes and so on. Or maybe not.
Or
Most
maybe
likely
not. Most likely not. Yes.
not.
No, I just for a little nerd talk, I was watching the you probably know Brandon Lee. I was watching. He's just he edits in Final Cut Pro, so he's like, for those guys that like the Apple platform, he's all me. About that. There you go. And he's a professional level videographer, and he was doing a gimbal. Yeah, I mean, if you
he's like the master of gimbals.
The lord of gimbals. Yeah, the gimbal baron. And he was doing a really really cool the A7S3. In like a real practical kind of way, talking about exposure. You've seen it. Okay, yeah, it was cool. Yeah, it was really really cool. I like that kind of stuff.
Like the one shot in Moonlight. Have you seen that one? Do you remember that one?
I mean, when he did, yeah, go ahead.
The shot was only lit by moonlight.
Yes.
And it looked great.
Looks perfect. Yeah, he was doing that with like the A7S2, and let alone. The A7S3, he has her like out in a desert or something in moonlight or something, exactly. And it looks utterly incredible, which makes me wonder. I'm like, what's wrong with me? Like why, how are people to pull these images? Which is something I feel like. I mean, that's why I need to. Next year is going to be a big educational year for me, because I'm going to be able to return to that with the time that's made available to me. So I'm really excited to like. Master exposure, because that's what it is. I mean, it's also a combination of exposure and then understanding how to manipulate light elements in your color grade afterwards that really locks it in. But
yeah, and getting the white balance right.
Yeah, get the all of this stuff that eventually. But I mean, it's so incredible. To me, it's like funny. It's like these people who get it. It's so obvious. Like the guy, I think I've told you, like there's Christian Matt Grab, Aiden Robbins, Brandon Lee, Oxout. It's this guy who does incredible stuff out of Tokyo. There's just this like group of dudes where I'm like, these people, I mean, I can see where I'm like scraping. I'm getting like closer to it, but there's something still very wrong with my knowledge of this stuff. But I've confidence. I have confidence that it's a matter of education, because they don't have. That's the thing you realize as you pull back these layers, is that there are no magicians. It's all based on simple manipulatable elements in your image, which are going to make something better. But such is life.
But
We
somehow,
must improve. Yes.
yeah, I know. I mean, for one, somewhere he said he doesn't shoot flat, but he shoots natural or whatever, friendly, because it gives him, it's much closer to an image that he can then start color grading, not color correcting, but grading, where he has like a usable image.
Right.
And he's not a colorist, but he just added this basic grade, and I'm like, fucking hell, what are you doing? It looks fantastic. It's perfect.
It's perfect. Yeah, it looks great.
Get out.
Yeah. Totally. He is he's very, 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 very skilled. All right. Well, I just want to before we shut out here, mention just how much I appreciate you people in Patreon, all the patrons out there, and I hope you guys. I'll probably be saying Happy New Year many times, approaching how many episodes that will go out before the end of 2020. But thanks everybody for tuning in. Thank you very much, Johannes, for coming on.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And check out Johannes' stuff. I mean, you guys probably know, if you're listening over here, you've seen the stuff we've done together on my channel, on his channel. But Japanese Journey, or The Japanese Journey, is it with the
Japanese, just on
Japanese Journey? Check out his channel. He's making great stuff. Yeah, that's why we originally collaborated. And everybody take care. Don't get too fat over the holidays. Try and have some restraint. All of us. All right. But, yep. Thanks again. And thanks again, Johannes. That's all for now.
Thank you.